Zenless Zone Zero drip fed both Burnice and Caesar about a week or two ago, and they look absolutely amazing. Before we dig into that, we still have Jane and Qingyi to get through. Right now, a lot of players are skipping Qingyi, and for what could be considered good reason, but what about the other characters? Should you skip Jane for Caesar, or even Caesar for Burnice? Now, most of this is usually determined by who's currently in your account and the teams that you're building, but Zenless is shaping up to be a game that keeps giving us interesting twists and turns.
Don't worry too much about it though, I got you covered.
In this video, I'll give you the rundown on which character should be the best pickup for you, and even go a bit further into detail on the team you should be building for them. Today we're breaking down Caesar's potential and what you should look out for, Jane's absolutely broken ability and
why she's probably gonna be number one in the game.
the possibility that Burnice may be our first off-field damage dealer, and Qingyi's true value to your account. Starting off with Caesar, since she is mostly speculations and theory crafting. This character is projected to be insanely busted, like almost a must-pull category's worth of being a character, or like it really feels like there's no in between. She's either going to be a must-pull or she's going to be just, you know, whatever. The reason I say this, and I have continued to say this, is because Zenless has constantly shown us they are sharing concepts or assets with Capcom. Exactly like how I called back when they revealed their big inspiration for the game being Street Fighter during the Street Fighter 6 round table. This was and is important because the concepts don't magically change just because it's a new game. The abilities or the use of like XYZ thing might change, but the concept doesn't. To explain, Caesar uses a sword and shield, SNS for short. Sword and shield as a weapon is one of the most notable from the Monster Hunter series in this specific case, which is one of Capcom's largest assets to this day. In the more recent Monster Hunter titles, SNS isn't outright broken, but it is one of the best because it does everything, and I'm using air quotes there. It's a jack of all trades, except the jack all part keeps the power, the speed, and versatility of everything else. So Sword and Shield holds the ability to defend, attack, has speed, and can debuff or buff with the weapon out. You can even dodge cancel out of any move, similar to how Zenless functions. To a non-Monster Hunter player, this might not sound crazy, so think of it like an RPG. There's typically a rule in RPGs or fantasy type games like Dungeons and Dragons, right? If a triangle were to exist, the triangle exists for power, speed, and defense. Then the triangle rule is in place. Then that specific rule in place regarding the triangle is that you cannot have all three. Otherwise, it's considered broken. So as I explained to you earlier, Sword and Shield has all three. If in the event, Caesar has the ability to parry without consuming assist points, that parry has a counterattack follow-up attached to it. This same parry or counterattack is also a part of her skill and doesn't consume energy, meaning it's free to use defensively at all times. She's also not mega slow like Ben, but instead has decent attack speed, somewhere similar to Soldier 11 or even Ambi. She has solid damage, and she could provide shields of any kind to the entire team like all the other defense agents in the game. She buffs the entire team like all the other defense agents in the game, or applies a debuff to the enemy she hits in any capacity, similar to how the stun units work. If Caesar even has a combination of half of these, she will fall under the must-pull category for at least 99% of players. In an action game like Zenless, which we can easily apply the Monster Hunter concepts to, specifically for this case, having the ability to control your on and off states, switch between defense, offense, and an option of speed or buffs / debuffs, you cannot ignore this. The only thing that would make this even more busted is if she throws her shield like a Captain America Super from Marvel vs. Capcom, and the shield sits on the field stun locking a group of enemies with the option to switch tech your DPS. So yes, she has the potential to be a must-pull category character, if you will.
But I don't know that yet.
Let's talk about Jane. For those of you that have completed the current version 1.1 story, you should have experienced Jane's gameplay by now. That may or may not have been impressive to you depending on if you master your way through it, so let me explain why she has my eye as the strongest unique DPS character in the game. Jane will be our first limited S-rank anomaly agent and is the only one at this moment in time who can force proc crits on anomaly effects. For those that haven't played any anomaly characters yet, TLDR, anomaly cannot crit. Think of it like damage over time, or DOT for short, within Honkai Star Rail. And that was the case until Jane comes into the picture. She now brings the ability for Assault to crit, and with her current kit, this can be guaranteed by pairing her up with Seth, which you're going to want to do that anyway, or some massive substat rolls. This is due to her core passive, Gnawed State. This ability gives the Assault effect the chance to crit based on her anomaly proficiency, and without getting into all the specific numbers behind it, the easiest way to see the effect of this currently in-game is by finding this one ability card in Hollow Zero that gives you the Execute ability. Now imagine doing any particular thing like a skill, ult, or just dropping them beneath 75% HP, and then suddenly the enemy loses so much health that they just get deleted. This is exactly what Execute does, and that is the closest realistic effect currently in game to display the raw potential of what Jane brings to the table. She also has what I often refer to as an install. This is when a character does XYZ to enter a transformative state for X period of time or permanently. When Jane gains enough passion stream meter, she'll enter passion state, and this drastically changes her DPS options. Her anomaly buildup rate increases, which means now she's able to stack on Assault almost instantly after popping the previous Assault. She has the ability to gain up to 600 flat attack, and her moveset slightly changes. Jane now gets triple dashes, extended slash range, new moves like a fucking dive kick, and faster startup frames. And the 99 extra dashes might seem like, whatever to you, from just hearing it at least, but your third eye isn't open enough. Jane passes through enemies when she uses these special dashes, meaning these are more than likely invincible dashes that lead into continued DPS or build-up pressure without worrying about getting hit. Due to the story itself, I wasn't fully able to test this, but in the story when I was playing Jane, I was able to dash through enemies and their attacks without taking the hit. There's so many things I can list about Jane that make her amazing, but the gist of it is Anomaly got properly fixed in the version of 1.1. Now the anomaly attacks build daze meter just like the stuns. The fact that she can easily build Assault on her own opens the door for other elements on the team, and now, finally, we can start seeing competitive disorder-based teams in Zenless. A character that doesn't care about building crit rate possibly does even more damage than 90% of the current DPS characters because of this insane ability. And she's got thigh jiggles. Sign me the fuck. For my excitement alone, you'd expect me to tell you to save and pull for Jane, but I'm only going to say that if you already have your first team built and you have a second anomaly unit or Nekomata specifically. Rena, Grace, and Piper are the first ones to come to mind as far as the anomaly units go. And Nekomata isn't really an anomaly unit, but her and Jane work phenomenally off of each other's kits, given you have the execution to pull it off. Then with Burnice releasing a full patch links later, that should give you enough time to save up for her. Going for Jane means you skip Caesar, regardless of how busted Caesar might be. You have to pick and choose your battles in Zenless. I know, y'all love waifu collecting just for the sake of doing it. But for a game that people were saying is Just Smash Baby's first video game when it launched, those same players have all retracted their statements and begun complaining about pay to win this or pay to win that. Coming inside of Burnice, I genuinely have zero idea what her kit is going to be. Similar to Caesar, I'm only going off the concepts from what I've seen. A fire type anomaly agent with 2 flamethrower tonfas for weapons and what looks like a jetpack, but is probably just her fuel tank. That is also probably still going to be a jetpack. So far, the only fire units we have are Soldier 11 and Lucy, who can theoretically apply passive damage off field. Soldier being through the use of almost frame perfect switch tech, and Lucy being an M6 support with quick assist. Neither of these are consistent sets of damage off field though, And given that we have 2 defensive units with Koleda and Ben, I imagine the only fire anomaly user we get has to be different. Like, there's no way they're gonna give us Grace, but fire, right? And technically, she could be like a Jane, who we just discussed has the ability to force proc crits on assaults, but burn is like a tick, 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 tick type of damage. Wouldn't it make more sense for a tick, tick, tick to happen passively, regardless of the character being on field or not? This is where my headspace with Burnice is and why I believe she will fit wonderfully on teams that want to push disorder. You know, in fact, actually, I feel like that's the next step for the dev team to complete as an option for our teams currently in the game. We have standard DPS teams that are pretty much crit focused teams, stun powered units, and good supports. We already have the standard DPS crit focused teams. We have strong stun powered units already, and we have really good supports, both free to play and paid for options. The only other type of team for them to start exploring would have to be the elemental sets, no? Off-field damage has a huge benefit in giving you damage plus an enemy debuff without taking up field time for your DPS character. In this case, a character like Ellen, Soldier 11, Billy, or even Jane, who can function completely fine on their own for as long as they want to, would absolutely love the type of off-field damage dealing character that we're talking about here. Honestly, this would be huge for Billy because of how strong assault on top of burn damage would be after you trigger the disorder. Somebody call Kogan. Now, Qingyi should be the shortest section here, to be honest, and technically Burnice was too, just for 2 different reasons. Qingyi is currently the best stunner in the game, but do you need her? Not really, especially with both Jane and Burnice coming into the game. Earlier in Zenless, stun characters were king. Every team structure needed a stun unit on it because that's just the way getting damage in the game worked. And of course, that is still technically the way damage works in the game. During CBT2 though, there was a giant caveat to this that got swept under the rug once the full version of the game launched: Ben. Ben is a defensive unit that has the capability of stunning enemies nearly as fast as Koleda, or at least he had it. Most players either don't play Ben because they don't want to, or they felt like they had to because everyone in their mama said Koleda needs Ben. Ben offers a couple of buffs to the team though through the use of his shield, has a parry mechanic built into his skill, and a counterattack attached to it. So the few things that I mentioned about why Caesar was so strong, Ben and technically Seth already have it. But why am I talking about Ben when this is about whether or not you should pull Qingyi? It's because I'm giving you a valid, free reason why you can make it through the game without Qingyi for now. The players who really want Qingyi are Zhu Yuan mains, since it's going to complete her best team, but you can get away with using Anbi as you were doing before. Qingyi is honestly a luxury pull, not a need. And while I love this character from head to toe, I wouldn't go around saying pull her over any of the 3 coming options in the future. Not because she's bad, but because the others have some insane value that currently does not exist in the game. There is not another Jane, there is not another Caesar, hypothetically, and there is currently not another Burnice, conceptually. The latter 2, of course, subject to change in design, and eventually we will have more of these unique options in the future. As a player, my best advice to you is to focus on building one team at a time and passively collecting a second or third if your resources allow it. I personally have fun with fast, aggressive characters and their playstyles, or the really busted jack of all trades sword and shield type. Because of that, if I was asking myself who to pull, I would prioritize Jane and Burnice as one combo, build them, then save for my next interest. If I wasn't interested in either of those, or I completely skipped Ellen, then I'd aim for Caesar and Burnice. Caesar has the potential to be a DPS regardless of having the defense role. This all just depends on how they play out the character's kit. Again, referencing Monster Hunter and the concepts there. Now that we're almost 2 months deep into the game, everyone should be on the same page now. I said it then and I'll say it again. Zenless Zone Zero is not free-to-play friendly enough for y'all to be collecting waifus like the Pokedex. Pick a team, build it to the best you can with decent vertical investment in mind, then pick another team and repeat the process. The dev team has already shown us we're getting new modes, potential co-op soon, and more difficult challenges. Why would you make that harder on yourself?